So welcome everyone to today's Lunch and Learn, AI-powered clinical trials, de-risking enrollment, timelines, and investor confidence for biotech. I'm Adrienne Klein with the Oregon Bioscience Incubator, and I'm really glad that you're here today with us. I am recovering from a cold, so I apologize in advance if my voice sounds a little wonky. I am going to try and talk a little bit less than I normally do during a Lunch and Learn, which is probably great news for everyone involved. But a couple of quick things first. We would like for you to stay muted during the session. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to see who's here. You can also drop your questions in the chat at any time. We'll be keeping an eye on those throughout, but we will be answering the majority of our questions during our Q&A time at the end. Let's see here. Our land acknowledgement. Otrati would like to acknowledge the land we are all on, wherever we may be. Otrati conducts business throughout Portland and beyond and is making an effort to acknowledge the history of the area and work towards decolonization of the bioscience industry. To learn more about Portland's native, diverse, and vibrant community, please read Leading with Tradition, a document created by the Portland Indian Leaders Roundtable, and we will put a link in the chat for that. I do want to announce a couple of upcoming events. We have our next Accelerate Biotech Happy Hour happening on Thursday, April 2nd. And we have another virtual Lunch and Learn coming up on April 14th. So keep your eyes peeled for those two events coming up. I want to let you know at the end of the session, a survey is going to pop up, and it's just a brief survey. And we would love for you to take a moment to complete it because your responses do help us shape the future of the programs that we bring to you. Now, I'm really pleased to welcome Nde Makalu, founder and CEO of Global Impact Bioconsulting. Nde helps life science leaders turn complex science into viable products, clinical programs, and markets. With over 2 decades in pharma and biotech, she advises organizations on R&D strategy, clinical development, and AI-enabled transformation. She's also a mentor in the Oregon Bioscience ecosystem, including here at the OBI. So Nde, I will turn it over to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Adrienne, and thank you to Otrati for this opportunity. Hello, everybody. I'm really honored to be here and share with you what I know around AI and clinical trial and how to de-risk your enrollment and also save your runway. I'm going to share my screen at this point, and we can get started. I have 40 minutes. I just want to make sure that I give you the information that you need. All right, let me share my screen. Adrienne, please let me know if you see my screen. Okay.
Okay. Perfect. We're there.
You see my screen?
We see it, yes.
Wonderful. All right. Again, welcome. It's such an honor to be here today with you all. My name is Nde Makalu, and I'm really hoping that by the end of this presentation, you'll have the information that you need in order to capture the opportunity that AI presents for clinical trials. So the title I submitted today was not chosen by accident. De-risk enrollment, timelines, and investor confidence. Those 3 things determine whether a biotech program survives. Those 3 numbers on the right, 20% timeline reduction, 26% higher recruitment, $22 million runway preserve. These 3 things determine whether a biotech program really survives, and those are numbers that are documented from the trials running right now at IQVIA, at ICON, and Syneos. So by the end of this session, you'll exactly know how to capture them. All right. I want to start with a question I know keeps people in this room awake at night. What happens to your program and your company if you miss enrollment by 6 months? For a large pharma, that's a bad quarter. For a biotech burning $3 to $4 million a month with 18 months of runway, it is not a delay. It is a board conversation about whether the program continues. 70% of sites say trials are getting harder despite technology advancement, and 50 to 80% of trials miss enrollment targets. When a patient drops out, you are paying about $20,000 to replace the patients. These are the stakes, and that's why this matters. The CRO industry is worth $92 billion, and it is structurally broken. 32 cents of every trial dollar goes to recruitment before you have even dosed a single patient. When a recruited patient drops out, you are not paying $6,500 to replace them. You are paying close to $20,000. For a large pharma, a failed trial is disappointing. And for a small to mid-sized biotech with $50 to $150 million in funding, it's company ending. So you have one shot. And you cannot afford to miss enrollment targets, and you cannot burn budget on protocol amendment that you didn't see coming. I have spent the last 6 months talking to CEOs running programs just like yours. And these 5 pain points I'm going to go over came up in every single conversation I have had with them. And they are not as operational frustration, but as existential fears. Enrollment is an existential threat. Missing target isn't a delay. It's a board conversation about whether your program continues. Amendments. Each one of them costs $150,000 to $300,000 and add months. The CFOs call every amendment credibility erosion. Competitive pressure. It's the same patient pool. If your competitor's trial is easy to participate in, they win the recruitment race in the market. Patient dropout. 20 to 30% of the patient will leave. At $20,000 per replacement, a 200 patient trial with 25% dropout costs you nearly $1 million before you have even gained a single new data point. Data cleaning. Missing data and late safety signal delay your database lock, pushes your readout, and let your competition read out first. These are not metrics. These are not metrics your operation team tracks. These are the metrics that determine whether you make it to readout or not. And I call them the survival metrics. Let's talk about the skepticism around AI. And I think it's healthy. Now let's just think about how do we protect the capital while we adopt AI. I'm going to discuss the 5 different governance framework to address the legitimate concern before you signing any contract. Trust. The question I always get asked is, can I trust a black box? The black box decisions are a liability. So the easy way out or the way to fix it is to demand explainability. IQVIA, ICON, and Syneos, they provide decision rational scores you can interrogate. If your vendor can't explain why it made a recommendation, just walk away. Bias. Are we missing underrepresented group? AI trained on historically biased data, they replicates exclusion at scale. So the way to fix this is to work with vendor. We build diversity metrics into their model. The FDA is actually watching this closely. Data quality, garbage in, garbage out. We all know that. Ask every vendor, what is your data provenance? If they can answer clearly, that's your answer. Regulatory. The FDA and EMA have now jointly issued a formal good AI practice principle covering the full trial lifecycle. AI is now recognized evidence generation infrastructure. Overpromising. It is very important. I mean, even before I get to the overpromising, the way to fix this question around will the FDA trust us is to really document your methodology. And if you are doing that, you are not just compliant, but also you are really ahead of the curve. As far as overpromising is concerned, CEOs have seen good demonstration of AI tools or technology, but they end up failing in reality. That's really something that happens all the time and is a real concern and is a fair concern as well. So the way to fix this is really to demand structured pilots with predefined KPIs before any enterprise deals. Ask for 20% enrollment improvement in 6 months, or you don't expand your contract. All right. Certain market leaders are already moving. I mentioned IQVIA, that is already delivering 20% trial timeline reduction. Icon is achieving a 26% increase in recruitment rate. That is their production system, not a pilot. Syneos and Parexel are running decentralized trials with adaptive design at scale. And here's what matters most to this room. Investors are no longer rewarding generic AI promises. The platform getting funded are the one showing measurable ROIs, recruitment time cuts, monitoring costs down, and data quality up. If your CRO cannot show you that evidence today, you are structurally disadvantaged, and that gap is widening every quarter. Now let's talk about the 4 pillars of AI-powered trial. And each of these pillars solve a specific problem, but together, really, they create this continuous improvement flywheel. Think of these 4 pillars as like a modern cockpit. Each solve a specific problem. Together, they create this feedback loop that gets smarter with every trial that you run. Let's talk about smart site identification as your navigation. And together, they create a feedback loop that gets smarter with every trial that you run. So let's start with the smart site identification as your navigation. The AI tool will analyze patient density and site performance history to replace like 3 to 4 months of RFPs with 30 days precision. That's where the 26% higher recruitment rate that I spoke about earlier begin. The patient matching, the intelligent patient matching, think of it as your radar. The electronic health records and claim data pre-screens patients before you spend $1 on recruiting them. As a result, you'll get 10 to 15% reduction in dropout by finding the right patient first. Okay, real-time data intelligence as your instrument panel. Safety signal caught in hours or not weeks. The database lock can be done in 3 to 4 weeks instead of 8 to 12, so that there's no surprises at the end. And lastly, the adapted protocol optimization, think of it as your autopilot. The AI will identify complexity hotspot before you even launch. So the section in your protocol, creating site activation delays. That's what I mean by the hotspot before launch. So that way you avoid amendments rather than react to them. Okay. Let's talk about the financial case. Faster to patient first patient, around $3 to $6 million. really getting up to $600,000 in 8 months back. Enrollment and retention. Faster enrollment can save you $12 to $16 million. And database locks acceleration, like first to read out. Like there's a total of $15 to $22 million in preserved runway, plus a 6 to 12 months competitive window. For any company with 1 or 2 shots at the readout, that is not an efficiency gain. That is the difference between making it or not. So why now? Why are the 5 forces that are creating urgency right now? Let's talk about that. Those 5 forces are converging right now, and none of them wait. The market consolidation, number 1. Only 3 CROs have world-class AI today. In 3 years, it's a stable stakes. And in 5 years, non-AI CROs will be irrelevant. The funding pressure. We all know that it's down 40% from 2021 peaks. Investors are measuring capital discipline more closely than at any point in the last decade. The regulatory shift. In January this year, the FDA and EMA published their first ever joint framework for AI in drug development. Right now, it is voluntary, but the voluntary today will be like an expectation tomorrow. And the EU Act, I'm sure you have heard about it. The EU AI Act is actually going into enforcement in August of 2026, and that deadline is firm. The companies documenting their AI governance now will move through the regulatory review faster and with more credibility. The ones who wait will spend the next 2 years retrofitting, and the window is open, but it's narrowing. The rare disease and cell and gene therapy. 70%, 75% of the cell and gene therapy pipeline target rare diseases. These small number trials are nearly impossible to run well without AI. So it's happening. The first mover advantage. 2026 is the year that evidence will arrive. For the first time, we have roughly about 15 AI-designed drugs in phase 3, or phase 2, phase 3, with pivotal readout expected through this year and into 2027. The industry will finally find out whether the AI-assisted program can beat our stubborn 90% clinical failure rate in clinical trials. The companies running cleaner and faster AI-enabled trials will be the one positioned to be part of that answer. It really captures the market. So decide now, and you are operationally different by the end of Q4 2026. Right, let's talk about implementation now. We cannot really afford an 18 months pilot with no result. So here's a pragmatic path built for companies at every stage. The first phase, months 0 to 4, for a phase 2 to 2B trials, not really your most critical. Think about it. And I know like some of you may have just like one trial, and that's okay. It's very important to deploy the site selection and protocol optimization very early. And have really some hard KPIs set up front. The FPI within 10 weeks, 0 amendment in 6 months, and 15 enrollment improvement. I mean, the goal is really to prove to your board that AI delivers measurable risk reduction. So the phase one, month 0 to 4, is your targeted pilot. It costs about 150 to 150,000, and pick one phase two trial, deploy the site selection and protocol optimization, and have some hard KPIs set up upfront. And then you'll get the first patient in within 10 weeks, zero amendments in 6 months, and 15% enrollment improvement. The goal really is to prove to your board that AI delivers measurable risk reduction. Phase two, that's month 4 to 12. Phase one is real-time data monitoring. You'll get database lock in 4 weeks instead of 10, and full enrollment analytics across active site. And that's a cost of 300 to 400,000 total. Phase three, that's months 12 plus, is all about strategic integration. You'll have like your full stack AI across all phase two plus trials and have a structural pipeline advantage. And that's a cost, a new investor narrative is like we are an AI-enabled biotech. This is a total of 18 months investment that is $1 to $1.5 million. And the total value created is about 5 to 10 million. That's a 5 to 7 time return on your risk mitigation investment. For the CEOs, with a single program, if this is your only trial, phase one is still your path, and we'll design the implementation to protect it, not experiment with it. Okay, let's talk about next step. Daisy,
This is specifically telling us is that what AI capabilities can offer you, what timeline reduction can you demonstrate, what recruitment improvement data do you have, and what is your AI governance framework? So make sure to just push back on those. Okay, so the next part is identifying your pilot trials. Pick a phase between 2 and 3 with your enrollment program in the next 4 to 6 months. Make sure that the complexity is medium. Don't overexert yourself. Make sure that you are meeting the budgets, and make sure that not all of them are critical programs. Make sure that you're giving yourself some room to make sure that the improvements can be made. So don't overextend yourself. Okay, make sure that they are deliverable. So Ende, I'll let you continue. Can you hear us?
Thank you so much, Daisy.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
can you hear me?
Yes.
This is what I call teamwork. I really appreciate that.
So
Okay.
someone, Ende, real quick.
Yes.
Someone did suggest that if you turned off your camera, that it might be the internet might be a little bit more stable for you. So feel free to turn off your camera, but keep your mic on and then work through the slides.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. Let me turn off my video. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So that Daisy went through like the second phase, which is identifying your pilot trials. And number 3 is really hiring while you're doing all of that. Make sure a chief data officer or AI clinical lead. The budget is about 100 to $200,000. That person doesn't need a PhD. It needs to be an operator who understands pharma plus data science. And their role is to own the CRO partnership, you know. And that's how you become an AI-enabled biotech in investors' eyes. Okay. Daisy, let's get to the last slide.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
So the mission has not changed really. It's AI just get therapy to patient faster. When you use it well in clinical trials, you recruit better patient and faster. You ensure better data quality, and you deliver safe, life-changing treatment to patients sooner. In my opinion, that's not just good business, that's good for patient. So let's get it done. So that's that's the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to share to, answer any question that you guys may have. And thank you for your patience with these internet connection issues.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone so much for your patience through all the wonky technical difficulties we experienced, but we would love to answer some questions for you. So please either put your questions in the chat and we will read them out loud, or you can go off mute yourself and ask them as well. Looks like, yes, Kirsten's going to be reading the questions for us.
Yeah, so Brenda has asked, could you advise on where newer companies get bogged down the most when trying to implement AI?
Yes, that's a good question. I mean, people get bogged down, and Daisy, please chime in because she has been seeing that quite a bit. People get bogged down by fear or of where to start with AI, or they start with just a pilot because again, it's by fear. Then the pilot is only addressing, it's not just one aspect or of your processes in your organization. But when we think about it from a system perspective and integrated AI into your system, that's even like much better, and people get more results or become more successful in terms of implementation. But I think it's the fear of starting or even worry about your data, which is a big deal. People worry about how is my data going to be protected? And I think now with the advancement of the technology, there's so many different ways to actually protect your data, and having your own internal AI technology built on your own data, but also making sure that your data actually cleans to be able to be training the large language model, whichever one, the enterprise one that you have for yourself. But for me, it's really the fear of starting or worry, especially in our industry. The pharma industry is very well regulated, so it's for me, it's fear. Daisy, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, on top of that is obviously the fear and really not knowing what AI can do or what AI really does, right? Because there's a lot of definitions with AI. So it's clearly defining that for your own organization or for your own teams, however you're going to use it. So really the goal for an AI consultant such as Ende and myself is to come in and really understand what's going on. Do you have your processes in place? Are they all documented properly? That's where a lot of AI automation is really more about getting you organized. So it's not so much the fear of it's going to take over the actual, developer that's in your labs. It's not that. A lot of where AI is implemented in your world is going to be in your processes and automation of workflows, that type of stuff. So it's really understanding, do you have the workflows? Do you have all your information organized? And if I'm going off base, and they please let me know. That's where what Ende is trying to say is that make sure that it's really understanding how you operate. If you don't have that, then that's when you bring in somebody to go, okay, let's get you organized. It might not be an AI solution. It might just be a workflow organizational solution. Not everybody is AI is what I want to say. So don't fear that it's all going to be about AI. It's integrating some parts of AI into where it matters.
Absolutely. Thank you, Daisy. But I hope that answers that question, but happy to elaborate more.
Yeah, and there's another question. If you had to prioritize one AI intervention that delivers the fastest ROI for an early stage biotech, what would it be and why?
Yeah. Like I said earlier, in the implementation roadmap, if you are like a small biotech and you have like one trial, um, it's all about making sure that it's set up for success and looking into, like that one investment and deploy, making sure that you have like the right sites, the right patient, and your protocol is optimized is absolutely crucial, right? And define some clear KPIs if you're going to work with a CRO to make sure that they have the capability in order to support you in that one trial, which is your asset, because you only have one shot. So that would be like that first phase that I have described in terms of like the implementation. So that way you will see your information, you see the data before you actually try to expand to something else. But the key here is really working with the right organization, and in this case, the contract research organization that have those capabilities. Because now, yes, we have those three big ones, but there are some also CROs as well that are looking into it. And I think it's all about making sure you ask those questions. And I'm happy to share, those questions that I have mentioned earlier in my presentation with anybody who needs it, so that when you have those conversations with the CRO of your choice, then you make sure that they are fully equipped to be able to run that one asset that you have in clinical trials.
Brian asks, from an operational and regulatory standpoint, how do the EU health data space, EHDS, GDPR, the EU AI Act, and emerging Eurostack aligned digital sovereignty initiative collective reshape the compliance, data governance, and infrastructure requirements for AI-enabled clinical trials conducted with the EU or the non-EU sponsors targeting EU regulatory approval, and what are the implications for trial scalability, cross-border data flows, and investor risk modeling?
Mm. That's a very good question. Like I said earlier, it's only in January this year, and I'm happy to share that with you. The CEDAR and CBER have collaborated with the European Medical Agency, EMA, and they have developed this 10 guiding principle for industry and product developer can consider when using AI to advance drug development. And these principles are tailored to drug development and emphasize on the importance of human-centric design. They have like this risk-based approach. Data governance is something that they emphasize a lot. Right now, like I said earlier, the EU AI GDPR is going to be in being enforced this year in August of 2026. And I didn't go deep into that, but I know that's something that the companies are actually being challenged to leverage when running their studies or doing drug development. But it's all about it, being sure that they adhere to the standard and having that multidisciplinary expertise when you come together. So this is just like the beginning, and like I said, it is now you can use it. It's voluntary use, those principles. But I'm sure like in a few months, this is something that becomes mandatory for everybody. So I think it's all about, documenting your processes and making sure that you understand all of these principles, that these two, regulatory bodies that are really very important are providing out there. That's really what I would say about it, and that's the guidance that they have provided. This is really new and started in January this year. I think there's a lot to look into, but at least they're seeing AI as more of an infrastructure, but not just a tool that people are using as piloting. So that would be like my response. I hope that answers the question. I think you're talking about like the GDPR, but that's the European AI guidance.
Can I add a couple to that? That's a multi-layered type of question as well. So it's a very sophisticated, multi-layered, multi-dimensional question. So I think it will be best so that and they can address it a lot deeper. So there's a couple things, layers to that I can see. One is the EU. I think you might be asking about the EU regulatory for Nexus for AI-enabled clinical trials. There's a couple of ways we can answer that strategically based on analysis. So one would be looking at the core regulatory stack. So there's I don't know the actual regulation number for that one, so we definitely have to research that. But the second one is within that are the territorial scopes that on EU-sponsored questions. So we want to dig deeper in that. So we want to better understand what your question is and how you want to adapt that in your organization. And then the next layer to that question is the GDPR layer, which is what Ende is trying to answer, I believe. And then we have to also look at how the EU AI Act affects that. So any AI used within clinical trials in the EU must comply with an AI Act. And so the AI Act categorizes AI systems into 4 different levels, risk levels really, as acceptable, high limited, and minimal. And then the clinical trial AI is actually almost certainly high risk. So we want to make sure we answer that question properly. And then within the EU Act, it breaks that down more as how those layers and the risk are measured within AI and the regulatory that they put around it. And then the next one to that one, second part will be the EU stack dimension, which is the infrastructure that the sovereignty of the risk is, I think, what you're asking. This is the least legal, codified, but arguably probably the most operational disruptive layer in the medium term. So, and then we can break that down a little bit more about where that act came from, the dependency on that with the US cloud and all those acts. So there's a lot of acts that we need to quote properly. So we want to make sure that we address that based on your question. And then there's also obviously the implications of the trial scalability, the cross borders, and also the investor risk, right, for the trial. So we can go on at depth about that, but a lot of it also will go around the investors and how they want to sponsor. There's the sponsorships of things for technology vendors, all that type of stuff needs to be all incorporated within that. So there's also the non-EU sponsors targeting, obviously, the EMA approval. So, Ende, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you, Daisy. And I think, what is important, from a clinical trial perspective is making sure there is an adherence to standard. And AI technology needs to really adhere to the relevant legal, ethical, and technical, or even cybersecurity, but also even regulatory standard, including the good GXP, is very important. Whether it's the FDA or the EU, EMA, is absolutely important that we adhere to that. And I think the governance is also very important. Governance, I mentioned documentation, where's the data source coming from, right? The provenance, the processing that needs to be, the step that needs to be processed, and also the analytical decision, all of that needs to be documented so that it's traceable, and this is something that is verifiable. And all in line with GXP requirement. So that appropriate governance, including the privacy and the protection for sensitive data, is also very important when you are also thinking about. So I think my advice would be really to make sure to understand, this guiding principle. And when the EU GDPR is coming into effect in August 2026, to really dig deep and understand what are the requirements there so that you can have a safe and trial and being able to get the data or the product to patient faster.
Another question is, how are investors currently evaluating AI-enabled clinical strategies versus traditional approaches?
Can you say that again? It's broken up.
Yeah. How are investors currently evaluating AI-enabled clinical strategies versus traditional approaches?
Oh, okay. Yes. Like I said earlier, investors, and they're not longer just investing into generic AI. I mean, it's absolutely, first of all, we know the climate that we are in. Funding is really reduced by 40% since 2021. So investors are really very careful when evaluating AI tools. And the AI technology, I'm not even going to say a tool because sometimes it's a system that needs to be put in together, needs to really deliver and making sure you have like clear KPIs. So the investor we want to see is, can I get to the right patient? Are you sure that you're going to get the patient that you're looking for to run in your clinical trials, at the right patient? Are these sites, right? The right site to run your clinical studies. So it's all about having these clear KPIs. That's what they're looking for before they invest, right? And in terms of like protocol amendment, with the AI tool now, you can optimize your protocol and to make sure that you don't run into like too many amendment that really eating into your runway, and because we know how expensive they are. So they're really looking at some clear KPIs before they really invest. And whereas in the past, it was the science is great. The science is always great. It's never about the science. But you have a good idea, and there's an opportunities and there's an unmet need out there in the market. A patient will need a particular treatment, and if you have something that you want to test and experiment and believe that it will help patient or improve their lives, then investor will invest. But now in this world of AI, yes, they will still invest. They believe in the science, but also with the utilization of AI, it has to come with like some clear KPIs. Are we going to delivering really? Like, is the technology going to deliver what it said it will? And this is where it's very important to have the right CROs with you when you're running your clinical studies.
Excellent. Do we have any other questions before we wrap up? Okay. I just want to say thank you so much, both Ende and also Daisy, for jumping in last minute too to get our slides out and help her with that. So thankful that you guys could make it to get today, and thank you so much for sharing your insights and all of your expertise on this, as this comes an emerging market for us. The session has been recorded, and we'll send the recording out and the slides later this week, so look out for that. And also we'll have contact information for Ende in there too. So if you wanted to continue the conversation with her about this, that would be amazing. Also remember that when you sign off, you will see a short survey, and that it would be great if you could take a moment to fill that out. We really appreciate your feedback. I also hope to see you guys at a future event. We've got happy hour coming up, and we also have another lunch and learn. So please check out our events calendar on our website to be informed of when and where those are happening. So again, thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Adrienne. I appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you,
you,
everyone, for
Ende.
being here. And
Wonderful.
thank you, Daisy. Yes, and my apologies for these technical issues.
Yeah, that happens.
All right,
Out of
thanks,
our
Adrienne.
control. Yeah, all out of our control.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll
Thank
talk to
you.
you later. Bye.
Bye.